Okay, I'm back. At the beginning of the last video, I was saying I was going to talk about mythology, and then I never got to it. I got distracted by some other things. So this is the video we're going to talk very briefly about mythology a little bit. I mentioned little kid stories that have animals in them. They're not true, but they're good for teaching lessons. Socrates likes that kind of thinking. He has several bits of mythology in the Phaedrus. The first one is where he says the soul is like a chariot that has two horses, and one horse is good and the other horse is bad, and the only way to live the right life is you got to control that bad horse. Socrates doesn't think that's true. It's just a way of thinking about the mind and the soul, that there are bad desires and good desires, and how do you encourage the good desires and control your bad desires. By the way, does not suggest murdering that horse, by the way. You're always going to have bad desires, but you have to control them. He's not like you can kill this horse or get two good horses or whatever. He thinks that's part of human nature, is to have a good and a bad side. If you know Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, for example, it's about a nice guy. He takes a potion and becomes a terrible person. Everybody has these kind of like the good angel, bad angel, right? That's something you could discuss in comments and papers. Is, do human beings always have a good or a bad side? Is Socrates right that you can't get rid of the bad side? You can merely control it as best you can. So Socrates' mythology. So one of Socrates' mythologies is about the soul with the good and the bad horse. He has another very similar mythology, but he has another one about the soul has wings, and that the soul kind of flies up and sees the heavenly things, pure truth, pure justice, pure beauty, and that these things help the wings to grow, and that when you fall in love and you see someone beautiful, you're reminded of the true beauty of heaven. Remember, education is remembering things that you already knew. Socrates' idea that, we know good writing from bad writing in here. Where'd you get that from? It was from before your soul was in your body, and it was flying up to heaven, and it saw these things in heaven, and it's now trying to get back to them. And that's why he talks about love is a reminder of the heavenly beauty. That it causes you, and all the pain and joy involved with love is like the wings growing out of the soul. So he's got so that's where his whole idea about memory comes from, right? The soul saw these heavenly things before it was in a body, and when it lands in a body, it's trying to get back there. And so when it sees someone beautiful, it's not like that's the first beautiful thing I've ever seen. That beautiful person reminds them of higher heavenly things. But if the bad horse takes control, they will seize onto that character. They will seize onto that person. But if the good horse is in control, then they will remember that that person is just a vehicle for getting to kind of higher heavenly stuff. Okay, cool. So, where am I now? Okay, so he has several different kinds of mythology involved here. So one of them is the soul. It's got two horses, a good and a bad horse. The other one is the soul has wings, and the earthly things reminded of heavenly things, and the soul is trying to get back to heaven. And that the reminders of heavenly things, the study of heavenly things, the study of philosophy help those wings to grow, so the soul can kind of return to that heavenly arena. He has two more bits of mythology coming. One of them is about grasshoppers, and it's a very, very fast one and has very little to do with anything. And then there's one more bit of mythology that has to do with an ancient Egyptian god. I know some of you guys like your ancient Greek and Egyptian gods, so that'll be more towards the end. And that's actually the best one, is the last one. But real quick, I just want to take a look at the grasshopper one. So in his thing about grasshoppers, and the grasshopper mythology, it's just really these two paragraphs. So Socrates says, I believe the grasshoppers chirping after their manner in the heat of the sun over our heads are talking to one another and looking down at us. What would they say if they saw that we, like the many, are not conversing but slumbering at midday, lulled by their voices, too indolent, that's lazy, to think? Would they not have a right to laugh at us? And might they imagine we were slaves who, coming to rest in a place of resort of theirs, like sheep, lie asleep at noon around the well? But if they see us discoursing, like Odysseus sailing past them, deaf to their siren voices, they may perhaps, out of respect, give us the gifts which they receive from the gods, that they may impart to men. So, again, does Socrates really think that the grasshoppers are listening to them and they're going to do stuff for them? Probably not. It's a kind of mythology. But he says, people, if we sit around here and do nothing, if we just sleep, if we nap, and again, remember, napping is taking care of the body, and Socrates is not interested in the body, he's interested in the mind. He likes the body, but the mind is superior. He says that if we discourse, these grasshoppers are going to kind of give us special gifts. Otherwise, if we just sit around laying about here, the grasshoppers are going to think we're lazy. They're going to think we're like animals. Again, like that bad horse. In this case, it's sheep, but the idea is sort of lazy animals. But he says if we talk and discuss, then the grasshoppers might be moved to care about us. He mentions, by the way, very briefly, Odysseus sailing past them, deaf to their siren voices, in a very famous poem called the Odyssey by Homer, who's an ancient Greek poet. Odysseus, there are these women that sing, but if you hear them, you get hypnotized and go towards them and then crash and die, and I think they eat you or something. So his point is that Odysseus makes his men plug their ears with wax when they go by. They'll be able to sail right past them. And in the same way, Socrates says, let's not, you know that little noise grasshoppers make? He says that he compares that to like the singing of the sirens. And he says, let's just listen. We don't want to get lulled to sleep listening to the grasshoppers. We want to keep talking and stay awake and think about mental things. And then the grasshoppers will reward us. If you look right over here, the next, Phaedrus has no idea what he's talking about, by the way. And Phaedrus says, what gifts do you mean? I never heard of any. And Socrates says, a lover of music like yourself ought surely to have heard the story of the grasshoppers, who were said to have been human beings in an age before the Muses. The Muses are the goddesses who sort of inspire all the arts, so poetry and music and painting and all of these things. He says, and when the Muses came and song appeared, they were ravished with delight, and singing always, never thought of eating and drinking, until at last in their forgetfulness they died. So he says the grasshoppers used to be people, and they loved listening to, they loved the arts so much. They just enjoyed listening to music that they forgot to eat, and they all died. Um, um, and now they live again as grasshoppers. And this is the return which the Muses make to them. They neither hunger nor thirst, but from the hour of their birth are always singing, and never eating or drinking. And when they die, they go and inform the Muses in heaven, who honors them on earth. They win the love of one of the Muses for the dancers and report of them, for Erato for the lovers, for the other Muses of those who do them honor. There's a bunch of different Muses. According to the several ways of honoring, Calliope, the eldest Muse, and of Urania, who is next to her, that's where you get the planet Uranus from. For the philosophers, of whose music the grasshopper makes report to them. For these are the Muses who are chiefly concerned with heaven and thought, divine as well as human, and they have the sweetest utterance. For many reasons, then, we ought to talk and not to sleep at midday. So Socrates claims that the grasshoppers are sort of in connection with the gods, the Greek gods, and that the gods of the arts, the grasshoppers, basically, they used to be people, and they loved art and music and songs so much they forgot to eat and drink, and they died. And now they're reborn as grasshoppers, playing music all day, because grasshoppers make this weird little noise that's like music. And so Socrates says that they are, if Phaedrus and Socrates keep talking about this stuff, the grasshoppers will sort of report good things about them to the gods. It's not really a huge thing to spend a lot of time on, except to notice that Socrates is a little worried that too much art, too much fiction, too much music is bad for you, that it may actually cause you to forget to eat and drink and die. So there's something going on here a little bit about the pleasures of art and the pleasures of, that's for another class, though. I have a lot of classes about art, and so I'll save that for when you follow me to other classes to talk more about the value of art. Yeah, okay, and I think that's the thing with the grasshoppers. So Socrates and Phaedrus are going to keep talking, and I will continue that in the next video.